Let's look at some of the software that you're going to need. Now, with any type of web development, you're definitely going to need a web server, definitely. Now, when we're working with PHP, you're going to be working with databases and definitely doing web design type work. You don't necessarily have to, but everything is going to center around that web server. Now, you can use Apache or IIS, and we'll talk about this. Now, IIS is the Microsoft Information Server, Internet Information Server, and it's nice to know that you can use PHP with Apache or IIS. Now, this is going to work on the Windows machine. You can use IIS or Apache, it doesn't matter. Apache is the standard. Now, with a local and a remote, now what I mean by local and remote is you're going to have to develop everything on a local machine probably, or even a local server, another machine that is going to be specified specifically as that server. And then remotely, that's where you're going to publish things. And that's going to be out for everybody to see, or your intranet, for example. But this is going to be your production server. So locally, you might have a development and or a testing server as well. Now, you will need PHP, PHP 4 or PHP 5. Now, the samples that you have here, they cover PHP 4 and PHP 5. There are differences between the two, but they're very compatible, meaning that PHP is very backwards compatible up to a certain degree, of course. It's not going to overstep way back to PHP 3, but you get the idea. PHP 4 is really the standard. PHP 5 isn't really considered a stable production, mission-critical type thing that a lot of hosting companies are still centering with PHP 4 for certain reasons. They're waiting for certain things to be taken care of course, so you have to check with your provider, your hosting provider, to see if PHP 5 is going to be supported. But you can host it yourself and you can use PHP 5. It's very robust, but that's really just where things are. PHP 5 is increasing with the level of hosts that are out there. And as you know, there are tons and tons of hosts that you can use. So just talk to them and get an idea of what you're going to need. And you can visit php.net to download, first of all, the PHP source code or the binaries, and you can definitely get a lot of great information from php.net. Now, if you want to do any type of database work, you're going to need a database. Now, the standard is to work with MySQL. 4.x, we'll talk a little bit more about what you're going to need for that. And you can go to mysql.com and you can download those for your operating system as well. PHP 4, PHP 5, any PHP flavor, and MySQL, everything's open source here, including the Apache. And everything is very cross-platform, so you can pick your operating system for the most part. And then you're going to need a PHP text or web editor. Now, the examples that we have here, we're going to be using Dreamweaver to show those examples. That's only because I really enjoy the what you see is what you get. That's going to be excellent for being able to train and to show you the examples and things like that. It also is very good for beginners who are used to PHP or anybody who's using PHP, but we'll talk about other software, other editors that you can use. You can use Notepad, a simple text editor, a more robust editor, something with better debugging functions, for example, but you get the idea. You're going to need to type some text into something and then preview in a browser, for example. Most likely you want to preview in multiple browsers because it is web development. All right, then you can have, well, other optional software could be things like PHP MyAdmin, which is a really great way to actually work with your MySQL databases, and it's going to actually be used in a open source PHP solution that you can modify yourself, but it's actually an application, a web application that you can install on a web server. You want to keep that locally. Probably you don't want to put it into a production environment unless you're using a hosting company where they have a lot of time invested in security, for example, but we'll take a look at that. We're going to use that. But you can also use other tools that can help you to manipulate your databases, for example. We'll look at other tools. And there is a lot of open source PHP code out there. A lot of different things that are going to help you, content management systems and things like that. PHP has a lot of open source solutions that are already written, and you can just basically install them, work within the license scheme, and you're ready to go. So you want to take note of that. Now, of course, you're going to need to pick an operating system. So the good news is the big three are supported: Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. And this is going to be for all of these solutions here, outside of IIS, of course. And we're going to concentrate on Windows, but we'll also work with some Mac OS. Maybe you have Linux or Linux on your production server that's out on the web because you use a hosting provider. You can also use a hosting provider for Windows or Mac OS and it's really great. So you can mix and match when you're talking about your local and your remote servers and how you develop things. Well, when you're working with PHP or Apache, you might come across this particular name here, LAMP. You might say to yourself, well, what is this LAMP? So a little Google search, and you're going to discover that LAMP is really just an acronym for the open source solution of Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And that is LAMP. So no big deal, just use it as you need to. There are other flavors, of course. Somebody came along and made WAMP, which is a Windows version of that, and you can put Apache with Windows, like I mentioned. Works great. We're actually going to install something called WAMP Server, which takes all that code together, puts it into a nice install routine, and allows you to do some really great things as far as switching between PHP 5 and PHP 4 or working with your database. It's really, really robust, great on the Windows platform. There are other flavors, like for Mac, for example. Then you just put that M there, and it's MAMP, whatever you want to pronounce there. It's up to you. But then you're dealing with the Mac. And then there's XAMPP, and that is really any operating system or different flavors of operating systems. And we'll talk about that as well. And again, you're dealing with Apache, MySQL, and PHP, and oftentimes Perl and other goodies that are put into these install routines. It takes all the source code, all the binaries, all those different folders, and it just manages it very, very nicely for you in a nice install. So my advice to you is use whatever floats your boat. So what I mean there is just use what is going to get the solution done for you. That's important. All right, so all that being said, we don't want to confuse you too much with a lot of slides and things like that. We definitely want to get a lot of hands-on things in the training, but I think it's important for you to know where exactly to download everything. Now, I told you before that you have to deal with Apache and MySQL and download it from php.net or mysql.com. Well, you can get wampserver.com. Put that /en/ if you want the English version. Otherwise, you'll get the French version. You want to go there and you want to actually download that package and download the latest stable package. And also go into the add-on section and get the PHP 4 add-on. I think it's really great to do that. Then you can switch between PHP 4 and PHP 5. Understand that right now it's Windows only. But this is what we're going to be installing and working with for the most part when we deal with Windows. And I recommend you do that. It's very, very easy. Now, XAMPP. This is from the great people over at ApacheFriends.org. Again, use the EN English because this is really a worldwide thing and it really deals with many different languages. So you just want to put in that EN there just so you don't get confused. Now, you can have the downloads there for Mac or Windows or Linux. Mac is in beta currently as of February 2005, so you want to take a look at that. You want to take a note of that. You can look up the Windows and Linux, and there are other solutions as well. Then there's MAMP, and that's mamp.info. Again, English, not a final again, but if you're on Mac, you want to check that out. When it does become final, you can expect that it's going to be pretty cool. It's definitely much easier than installing it yourself. It's very, very friendly. Then we have the phpMyAdmin.net. This is where you get that source code to do the MySQL administration from a web app, and that's going to be installed in your PHP folder. Now, WAMP is going to have phpMyAdmin in there, so you don't have to worry about it. XAMPP as well. Also note that extra P there, here at the end. Well, that stands for Perl, and that's going to be installed there as well. Perl oftentimes is a nice thing to use when you're dealing with PHP and Apache solutions. It's nice in general. It's a great scripting language. And then if you want to do it individually, well, apache.org, mysql.com, and php.net. So a lot of information. Here's where we wrap it up. I just want to talk about the versions that you're going to need or that could be very, very good for you. Now, Apache comes in the 1.3.33, very, very stable mission critical type thing, and then Apache 2.0. Now, not everybody considers Apache 2.0 an extremely stable environment. It just is the case that Apache 1.3.33 is extremely stable, so that's why they might remark on that. But Apache 2 is great as well, and it really is up to what you need. What are the requirements? You want to check out the READMEs, check out the documentation, but for the most part, you can work with 1.333. Oftentimes I do this. It depends on what my hosting provider supports because they don't want to have a lot of phone calls. They want your your websites to stay up as much as possible. You get a lot of 99.95% up accuracy as far as your servers being up. Well, we want to get to 100%. So this is why they do that. Now with MySQL, you want to go with 4.1.x. This is the latest at the moment, and you want to watch out for security issues. So you always want to keep an eye on MySQL and getting that installed correctly to the latest levels. Now with PHP 4.3, you're going to want that at least, but 0.1 is definitely where you want to be at. So if your hosting provider doesn't have 4.3.1, you want to definitely get a word into them and tell them, hey, we want to support the most stable, secure way of working with PHP. If you work here, you're great. And with PHP 5.03 is currently the latest, but again, all these numbers are relative to the time that you actually watch the videos. So you want to keep an eye on that. So I don't want to say 4.3.1 and then tomorrow there's this huge worm or something like that. So don't hold me to that, because everything changes. Everything is relative to the time period. So anyway, all that being said, you want to consult with your hosting company, and that's always the best thing to do. This is very, very good advice. It takes a lot of time to go around and find all of this, so I think it's really, really helpful for you, and you can use it as you need to. We're going to talk more about what we have installed and things like that, and what we're using and compatibility issues and things like that as we work through the training.